Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to your Monday morning edition of Wasatch Weekends. We love getting to be here every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to bring you great information about local community things and other things that you may not be aware of. We've got a great show in store for you for the next little bit. Not only are we going to be talking about endodontics, which is something that's really important because there's a lot of myths around root canals, and we're going to take those out of the equation for you, but we're also going to introduce you to one of my favorite PBS docuseries, Changing Planet, and how you can help prevent the changes and what they're doing to help the coral reefs and so much more. But let's take a look at that local weather forecast right now. Welcome back to the show. I had a chance to chat with this incredible doctor who's come up with this great new first aid program. It's called Stop the Bleed, and we're going to tell you how it can help save lives. Let's take a look. Living here in the mountains, it's so important that you have first aid training. Well, a great new way to do that is Stop the Bleed, and I'm joined by Dr. Kenji Inaba. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Truly a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, for people who do not know what Stop the Bleed is, can you give us a brief overview?
Sure. Stop the Bleed is a 1-hour program put out by the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma. It's basically designed to teach non-medical providers how to stop bleeding should a bleeding emergency arise.
Which this is something that's really important, and especially for those adrenaline junkies out there. So what are some common scenarios where Stop the Bleed and the techniques that you learn throughout the program might come in handy?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, this program was developed in response to an active shooter situation, but the reality is this can apply to any time that there is a bleeding emergency, regardless of the cause. So if you're out in the backcountry and an accident of some sort happens and there's bleeding, you can use this in your backyard at the side of a highway with a traffic collision. It really doesn't matter what caused the bleeding. These techniques will apply to any situation where there is life-threatening bleeding.
Which I think in the long run is so beneficial for people to have this information tucked into their back pocket. Now, why is Stop the Bleed different from other first aid programs?
Yeah, you know, this course is really designed to tackle the #1 most common cause of preventable death after injury, and that is bleeding. Unlike many broader first aid programs, this is designed very specifically to focus on 3 techniques that will help you stop the bleeding in this sort of situation.
Now, where can people go to find the program locally, especially if they're in a place where maybe this would be really beneficial to them?
Absolutely. We've got programs literally running around the world, and probably the easiest place where all this information is consolidated is the stopthebleed.org/save-a-life website. On that website, all the information that you could ever want about local courses, about the program itself, and equipment concerns, all of it has been consolidated onto that website. So that is, it's stopthebleed.org/save-a-life.
And why would you recommend people take this program as a current day modern first aid course?
You know, I think that regardless of who you are, what you like to do outside of work, where you live, these bleeding emergencies can occur. And so, you know, the reality is from the moment that injury occurs to when EMS arrives, that is precious time where if bleeding is occurring, there's a much higher likelihood that someone's going to not make it. And if you can intervene in that time period after that injury occurs, but before EMS arrives, there's a chance that you can potentially save a life. So I think it's a really valuable course. It takes 1 hour of your time, and it can really arm you with the techniques required to save the life of your friends, family, and anyone that you might run across that has a bleeding emergency.
So one more time, if people are interested in taking the course, where can they get the information?
Absolutely. It's stopthebleed.org/save a life.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, giving us all this great information, and thank you for the hard work that you've put in to cultivating this program. That way people can help save a life.
Truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Make sure that you check out this incredible first aid program. We all have an adrenaline junkie in our life, and you never know when Stop the Bleed is going to come in handy. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we've got more of the show, so stay tuned. Root canals are something that sounds really scary, and having tooth pain is no joke. Well, we're going to introduce you to a fabulous endodontist who's going to explain to you why a root canal could be the solution for you. Let's take a look. A great alternative to getting a tooth pulled is a root canal, and I know that sounds scary, but we've got a fabulous doctor here to give us some more information on why a root canal is better than an extraction. We've got Dr. Natasha M. Flake joining me. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Maddie.
Now let's talk a little bit about why root canals are really a prize factor when it comes to taking care of your teeth.
Yeah, so root canals are a procedure that are designed to save your natural tooth. And sometimes a tooth, the inside of a tooth, might become inflamed or infected and cause a patient pain. And a root canal is a procedure that is designed to save that tooth by cleaning out the inside of the tooth and then restoring the tooth afterwards. You're able to save your tooth. When at all possible, we want to save our natural teeth. Teeth are so important. They are important for eating, and they are important for speech, for forming our words, and they're also important for aesthetic reasons. Our smile is often the first thing that people notice about us. So when possible, we would like to save our natural tooth because nothing really looks, feels, or functions like a natural tooth.
Now, what are some of the biggest myths around root canals? Because when anyone hears root canal, their first thing is to shudder, but there are some really large myths around it.
Right, yeah. So really the largest myth surrounding root canals is that root canals themselves are painful. And that myth really comes from patients associating the root canal procedure with the pain that they had leading up to that procedure. So oftentimes when patients are in pain, and it may be a lot of pain, and they need a root canal, and sort of they associate the root canal with that pain. But modern root canal therapy is virtually pain-free. So we have techniques, we have anesthetics, we have modern tools and instruments that can help us to perform root canal therapy in a pain-free manner. And an endodontist is a specialist in root canals. So endodontists have 2 to 3 years of additional training after dental school, and that training allows us to be specialists in diagnosing tooth pain and in treating tooth pain and in performing root canal treatments, especially root canal treatments that are more complex.
Well, you just answered my next question for me. So if someone is experiencing tooth pain, what should they do?
If someone's experiencing tooth pain, first of all, it's really important to get it taken care of as soon as possible. You don't really want to wait because the problem can get worse. So you can either go see your general dentist to address that tooth pain, and sometimes your general dentist will refer you to an endodontist. But if you don't have a general dentist or would like to seek care directly from the endodontist, you may do that as well. So endodontists are the specialists in diagnosing and treating tooth pain. And you can find an endodontist in your area by going to findmyendodontist.com.
Now, why is it so important for people to take that first step, maybe leaning towards a root canal over a tooth extraction?
So there are, sometimes extraction is an option, but because our teeth are so important, we really, when possible, like to save our natural teeth. There are options for replacing teeth, and sometimes those are necessary, but when possible, we like to save our natural tooth because the replacement options are never really going to look, feel, or function quite like the natural tooth does. There are logistical reasons as well, because extraction and replacing it through another method also requires additional time and expense. But really, it's that saving the natural tooth and that function that it provides that's so important.
Now, if people are interested in learning more information about endodontists or maybe how they could find one in their area, what's the best resource for them to use?
Right, so if you would like to find out more information about root canal therapy or about endodontists, you can go to aae.org. And if you would like to find an endodontist in your area, you can go to findmyendodontist.com.
Dr. Flake, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, giving us all this great information. Now, what's one tip that you give people to help take care of their teeth to maybe avoid root canals overall?
Really, the first step in avoiding root canal starts at home, and it starts with good oral hygiene, brushing and flossing. And then the next step is really to see your general dentist on a regular basis for preventative care. And that can help you to avoid needing a root canal. And if a problem is spotted, that really taking care of that early so that it doesn't develop into something worse. And then if something does happen, then and a root canal is needed, you can seek care from an endodontist to help to diagnose and treat that tooth pain.
Again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and giving us all this great information.
Thank you so much.
Make sure that if you're having any tooth pain that you take the right steps moving forward. That way you can take care of your beautiful teeth and your wonderful smile. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we've got more of the show, so stay tuned. A great docuseries on PBS is Changing Planets, and they do a deep dive into giving you more information on things that are happening on our planet and why some of them are so critical that we take action. Well, they did a special on the coral reefs, so let's take a look what they have to say. Something we talk about pretty frequently is the changing of the planet, and there's a lot that takes place that we might not realize here in the mountains. Well, I'm joined by a spectacular doctor who's going to give us some more information, so I'm going to have you introduce yourself and your incredible job title.
Hi, Maddie. My name is Dr. Sanjayan. I am the CEO of Conservation International and the host of the PBS series Changing Planet.
Now, let's talk about Changing Planet and what research you are currently doing to help maybe mitigate the change that's happening.
Sure. So Changing Planet is a multi-year series, and it's really an amazing idea. If we go to some places and we track them over many years, can we see the change that is happening to our planet because of climate change? I mean, you live up in the mountains, you can see what's happening to snowpack in some years or forest fires. So those are the kinds of environments that we wanted to track. And this year, we focused on coral reefs. We've been filming coral reefs for the past few years, and we thought we should focus the entire special on just coral because it was such an important topic. We're going through record heating of the oceans right now. And if you go diving or you go swimming in the oceans, you'll notice the temperature this summer, and it'll be warmer than anything you've experienced before. And that is having a huge impact on coral reef, which are losing their life ultimately. And once they break into rubble, it's very difficult to put them back. And what we do in this series is follow groups of scientists who are putting things back together again and doing things that, frankly, as a scientist, I had never seen before.
Now, there's a lot happening with the coral, but it is such a unique piece of our ocean floor that's also really important. And so what makes the coral so important to everything around us?
Right. So when we think about coral reef, we're nearly always thinking about, like, if we go on a beach vacation or we go snorkeling or we go diving. Interestingly, sort of, Colorado has, like, I think the highest number of divers of any state on a percentage. So lots of people in Colorado, I know, go diving or snorkeling or take beach vacations. That's what we think of, and that's true. So they provide economic lifelines to many communities. But 500 million people around the world depend on coral reefs for their food, so from fish. And even living, say, far from the ocean in Colorado, for example, if you go and buy say, snapper at a restaurant, or have grouper, or sometimes have lobster, those species are ultimately coming from coral reefs, or the fish that you're eating feed off of fish that come from the coral reef. So they're incredibly important to humans. And then virtually every coastal community, to some extent, owes its existence to things like coral reefs. So Florida, it only exists because there's a gigantic barrier reef right there that protects the coastline of Florida. If you go to a beachy sand beach vacation, that sand is there because of coral reefs. So they're really important, not just for life on the planet, because they're so biodiverse, they have so much life. They're also important because they help sustain life, help sustain our life as well.
Now, you guys are doing a great project, something that you guys are calling Coral IVF. Could you tell us more about that?
So the way coral reproduce, they look like plants, but they're not, they're animals. And the way they reproduce is like most other animals. There's sperm and eggs, and then they fertilize in the open ocean. And then the baby coral look like almost tiny, tiny microscopic looking jellyfish. They're not jellyfish, they look like that. And they swim in the open current. And then ultimately, once they settle onto a hard surface or onto another coral, then they grow into what you see as the structure of coral. Now, that's very few of those sperm and egg actually meet up. So if you can collect them in the ocean at scale, you can collect millions of them, then you can put them together inside a lab, for example, and you can get them to fertilize at a much higher rate. So it's really IVF treatment for coral, and then you got to go release them. And in this episode, in this special, we filmed some scientists who are using a new technique for attracting the baby coral to come back to the parental reef, so they don't just swim off into the current and are lost forever, by using sound. So it turns out that baby coral, just like your baby, might be really attracted to sound. And so by playing the right kinds of sounds, literally on speakers underwater on the reef, you can increase the chance of them settling down.
That is incredible, and what a fascinating use of technology. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, giving us all this great information. We are running out of time, but I wish I had more because I have so many more questions to ask you. I guess I'm just going to go have to watch the TV series.
You do. PBS.org, it's streaming. You can watch it there.
Again, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for all of the hard work that you're putting in to bring light to our changing planet.
Thank you.
We want to thank you so much for tuning into your Monday edition of Wasatch Weekends. We love getting to be here all the time to bring you such wonderful information. Now, if you have not watched Changing Planets on PBS, we highly recommend that you do so, as well as make sure that you're taking great care of your teeth. That way you don't have to go see the endodontist, but if you do, there are some great ones locally and they will help take care of any pain that you are having. Also, make sure that you check out Stop the Bleed. That way, if you're in one of those critical situations, you could help save someone's life. I've been your host, Maddie Evans, and we can't wait to see you on Friday for your next edition of Wasatch Weekends.